What is up, all forms of social media? James Joseph Edward Jessberger Jr., but please call me Jimmy for short. Today's podcast episode will be the topic of D&D. Now, what is D&D? If you do not know what D&D is, it stands for Dungeons and Dragons. To be more specific, most of these stories, how I started, will be D&D 5e, which just means 5th edition. If you are like, I don't understand D&D and I want to play D&D, this is like a first good video for you to start out with, because I will tell you my experiences from the beginning and just off-topic things maybe that I'll get into with this podcast episode. But besides D&D 5e specifically, I will probably be talking about Critical Role a lot. I'll probably be talking about my personal experience learning how to play the game and getting to play with other players. And I will talk about playing Pathfinder 1 edition or 1e, and I will talk about 1st edition, or I will talk about Pathfinder 2e also, as I'm starting that campaign now. So let's get straight into it. This podcast episode is talking about Dungeons and Dragons. Now, to start off this podcast, I have to tell you why I was even interested in D&D or Dungeons and Dragons. It was not always something that I was interested in. To start off, I kind of have to go into, why did I want to even get into the game into the first place? I have always been an actor. I've been an actor since kindergarten. I probably should have made my acting video before I even started talking about D&D, but hey, I wanted to do this video and I just got done a D&D session, felt pretty good about it. So let's do this podcast episode. I wanted to do it anyway after doing the D&D tag. But I've always been a performer. I've always been an acting kid. And I heard these rumors of D&D, like people kind of playing D&D during middle school, like on TV mostly. And then when we got to high school is when I really started hearing people say like, oh, D&D is so much fun, you should get into D&D if you're an actor. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And I'm not gonna lie, from when I was younger to about college, I was like, D&D is for nerds, in a bad way. But now I look at it as, well, I would say maybe like my sophomore year of college, because I really changed a lot in college. But it wasn't until like my end of the year college years that people started talking about D&D more as like a cool thing to do with friends. It was more of like an improv-y thing. I was like, you know what? I kind of want to try and play D&D at least once. I had a few friends from college who already were playing D&D, but I never got the chance to do it myself. There was always like talk about it, and then finally is when I have my story of how I got into D&D. So right after college, I graduated from Arcadia in 2016 with my BFA in acting and minor in music. I went straight to an outdoor drama theater company called Tecumseh in Ohio, where they perform Tecumseh every year. And it's an amazing show. It's talking about the frontiersmen and the Native Americans especially, and how things went on during their time and what the story of Tecumseh truly is. And I found a group of people while I was out at Tecumseh who were talking about D&D, and I was like, hey, I've always wanted to play D&D, but I've never gotten into it, and I never thought I would play it. Not that I thought that I was like cooler than D&D, but I was just like, oh, I never thought I would play it because I thought it was like too mathy or too nerdy for me. And I had somebody from Tecumseh, I will say their names because I'm so proud of these stories. If I don't say names, it's because I'm not proud of the person, and they probably don't want their information put out there like that. But my first D&D story technically is when I was out in Ohio, living in Ohio. There was a guy, a friend by the name of Clint. He was making his own, which I didn't understand anything that was going on, especially we were playing quote unquote D&D at the time, or more of like a tabletop game. He was making a module game for his own, edition of D&D, whether it was like 5e or something, whatever it was. He had brought his whole game with him. He had brought dice with him, and he was talking over with some people. And I said, "Oh, I'd love to try it. People have always told me to try it. They said that I'd probably be into it because I like video games and fantasy stuff." And he was like, "You should play with us." So from session 1 up until the last day I was at Ohio, like one of our last sessions, we played D&D. We played it was I think he calls it Starship or something. It was different. But my first character, going from the D&D tag, I played a Dragonborn fighter, like warrior type. I can't remember what exactly it was called. but I fell in love with the game. I fell in love with, like, they gave me my first set of dice that I didn't keep. I gave back because it was their dice, but I borrowed dice. I got to kind of learn how to play and roll and stuff like that. And it was just fun for you to get to, like, I came in with an actor's background, but I truly believe everyone and anyone should play D&D because it truly breaks you out of your comfort zone too, and you should really be pushing to try and, like, make your own decisions and be, like, the hero of your own story. And that's what I truly love about D&D. You get to be other things besides yourself that have parts of you in the character anyway. So that was, like, my first experience. I always say your first D&D experience, unless you're playing it for a very long time, like at least 4+ levels in a campaign, and you're getting to level, like, 10, like at least 10's the hallmark, we call it, like the where you get, like, really level 5 is where people, like, kind of trail off. It's in the beginning. You get, like, 4 levels, and it's like, oh, you're gonna continue after level 5, because the real good stuff where people usually end is, like, level 10's, level 15's. That's where the campaign really starts to get good. You really get to get into your character, etc. So then I will not say people's names for this. I was working somewhere, and a group of people had invited me to play D&D, and some of the people I still consider good friends. Some people I do not. They brought me in, and I'm gonna have to give D&D information just because, like, it's not gonna make sense unless I don't. But I'm not gonna say names. So if the people out themselves, they out themselves. But this is my true opinion anyway. It's been years, and they basically kicked us out, or we left anyway. So it's like, whatever. And I don't really care. I don't really give a fuck. So I was in a D&D campaign with people that I was around at the time. And they asked me what my D&D experience was. I said, I love D. It got brought up that I really love D&D. And they were like, oh, you should join our D&D campaign that we're already playing. And they were saying, like, oh yeah, we'd love to have you in and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, I played in 2016. Like, I played in the summer, but I think it was like 2017 almost by this time. I was like, yeah, I played a little bit in 2016 summer. We didn't really play D&D. We played, like, a module of it. I was trying to explain to them, and they were like, oh yeah, we kind of understand what you're talking about. So I started playing D&D with them, and the first day I came in, I had no idea, like, I was supposed to make a character sheet, because my DM before, or my GM, I should say, because Game Master instead of, like, Dungeon Master, really made all of our stats for us. He, like, just asked us. He was like, what do you want your thing to be mostly in? He was like, because you're a fighter warrior type, you might want to put more of your stats into strength. And, like, now I understand where he's coming from and all that type of stuff. But I went into this game, and they were like, we're going to make your character first session you come in. And I was like, okay, I don't know, like, anything about blah, blah, blah. So I come in, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, one guy who I enjoyed was playing a barbarian, or a fighter. No, he's playing a fighter. One person was playing a rogue, and I forget what the other person was playing. They might have been playing a barbarian. No, they were definitely playing, like, a fighter or something. No. They were playing, like, a. Now I'm getting all messed up. They were like a barbarian or something. I can't remember. Maybe something with a little bit of magic, but it wasn't, like, something that I was like, whoa, like, a lot of magic. Then me and another person trailed on to this and joined the game that I was not happy about. I was like, hey, I thought this was me just, like, joining a group of people that somebody else got sucked into it. So when I came in there, and I was there before I think the other person joined in. Maybe I'm forgetting what happened at that time. But they asked me, oh, what do you want to play? And I said, well, I kind of would like to play something that I've already played before, even though it might not be the same thing as Dungeons and Dragons. Would it be okay if I played something like a dragon? Because I kind of knew it was called, like, Dragonborn or Dragonblood or something. They're like, oh yeah, there's Dragonborn in 5e. I was like, okay, cool, I'll play a Dragonborn. Because I kind of knew stuff, but, like, when you have never used the players, I will be blunt honest with you. If you have never used the player's handbook before, and somebody hands you the player's handbook, and they're like, hey, pick all your stuff and let me know what you like. Don't do that to somebody who's brand new to the book. I will never do that. I will literally sit down with them and be like, hey, here's, like, I forget how many classes. Like, let's just say 8 classes. Here's, like, the 5 races, whatever. You get to pick from these what you want to be. No offense, I was kind of like thrown in and was like, oh, you want to play Dragonborn? Okay, cool. Here's the Dragonborn stuff. Oh, what do you want to play? I was like, well, I kind of want to be a fighter or a warrior, but like I didn't get to use spells before. So the obvious answer for most people, if somebody says I want to still smash things, but I want to cast spells, obviously you want them to be a paladin, right? I did not understand at that point that paladins were mostly, or you could have written it. Now Tasha's and Xanathar's Guide, all these different books that are with D&D and everything have changed the way we think of clerics and paladins, but like, or druids. And now you're like, before it was like you had to think of it as like a holy thing. And that's what they told me. It was like, you are like a holy character. You use your holy divine from your god. And I was like, I guess I kind of understand what I'm doing. So I researched after the first, because the first session day was like, hey, they're meeting my character. And the other thing was, not that I wanted my character to be like a joke, but like I came into a funnier group and they were like, oh, what do you want your character's name to be? And I was like, I don't know, what should I name my character? Because I wasn't that like I did improv and I've had improv classes, but I wasn't like on the fly knowing what Dragonborn names were. And I was looking at the Dragonborn names and half of them look crazy. You're like, oh, I've never seen these letters put together before, because every race is different. And you don't necessarily have to do what's in the book. But somebody was like, what do you think about right now? And I said sausage. And they were like, okay, well, why don't you just put half a sausage and your name together? So the character's name was Sasami. After that day, we did a little skirmish or a session 0 type of thing. They asked me for Sasami's backstory. Now, I started doing a ton of research. I started looking through the book. And before I even started reading, like, the backstories of why you become a paladin and what the Dragonborn is, I just looked at, like, the traits. It was, like, Dragonborns are this tall and this height and this weight. And, paladins get, like, this ability and this ability. So I just started, like, brainstorming because that's my background. My background was, like, acting. And I loved getting to write about character settings and circumstances. So I started writing like the setting, and it ended up my backstory. Now, most people can write a backstory in like a paragraph. They just like doing that stuff. I love giving DMs stuff to fuck with. I love giving DMs things that they can mess with the player. They can fuck with the player. Like even right now, my one character in a campaign, I'll get into this later more, but my one character in a campaign is a werebear, and she just found out that her father might have done this to her. Like I didn't write that in, but the DM chose to do that, and it's so crazy about all that stuff. But yeah, I wrote like at least, I didn't even think it was that much because my acting homework was a lot more at that point. I mean, before I graduated and stuff like that. So I handed in. They wanted it all emailed or Facebook documents. I used Google Docs at that point, and I still use it to this day for all my backstories and sheets and spells and stuff like that. Sent a 2-page document. Apparently, I found out they were making fun of me behind my back because I wrote too much about my character. When D&D is about having fun, it's about doing what you want to do, and you should write as much as you want because you're having fun with the game, and that's what it is. It's role-playing. It was supposed to be at first that Sasami, we made jokes at first that like his shield and his sword look like they're made out of dicks, and like, he protects, but like I made like a real backstory behind it. I was like, there's this sex god that's like taking high priests from my god's religion, and they like cut off their dicks for ceremonial things. Like I made it so much. I came into one of the first sessions, mind you, and the person was like, dude, like, why did you write an essay for, like, your character? And I'm like, because that's what I thought it was supposed to be like. Like, this is what my character... Like, and I just wrote it off as, like, a joking thing. Like, oh, this was, like, what I did for my acting homework. I just thought it was, like, a standard for D&D. And it sounded like other people did this already. They were like, no, like, some of us only wrote, like, a paragraph or a sentence. I'm like, okay, if that's what your character wants to do, blah, blah, blah. Then I found out the horrors of some people just want to be like money goblins. They just want to go around and fight things and gain experience. That's all they want to do. They don't want to do like RP or role playing. They don't want to like have fun at the table. They don't want to experience the world as like their characters, which is completely fine. If you want to play that campaign, just don't bring me in and me have expectations and stuff like that. So then I have to bring this up because it's one of my main things about me. The DM who gave me so many issues, the DM had brought up Critical Role or Crit Role. And I was like, you know what? I'll get to it. I was working at an office job where they allowed you to watch things or listen to podcasts on your headphones while you were doing like menial work jobs and stuff like that. I watched, I'm not even joking, I watched all of Critical Role. Let me see, if I worked a 9 to 5 essentially, which is like 8 hours, and I worked overtime most of the time. So I worked about 10 hours a day or plus, and each episode's about like 4 hours. I think I got through the whole campaign in like less than 2 months. Because I was watching it almost every single day at work, and I was falling in love with it. It kept me up at my desk and stuff like that. Like I owe Critical Role a lot. They've got me. I know it's sappy to say that, but they have really got me through a lot. So I started learning Dungeons and Dragons from Critical Role, which, in hindsight, is that the best thing to do? You should really just be reading the books and studying the information. But like, it's better sometimes to just learn from people that have been playing the game for a long time, even if they don't always get the rules right. It's like the rules don't have to be right all the time. So I learned a lot. I learned a freaking lot about Dungeons and Dragons 5e especially, and I learned how to like role play, and I got really into this. And I'm not going to say that I finished the campaign while I was still in that group, but I was definitely a few weeks into it, I think, at that point, already watching it. And yeah, we had some interesting, and one person was pretty good with like role playing that they also brought in. That was one of my friends at the time. And we would, role play together, and we wrote our backstories together because like my backstory was already written, and then we had both of our characters come in, and we had to write our, right before we met the whole party, we wrote our backstories together so that we could like, work and stuff like that. It was I actually really liked that backstory. I would bring that character back eventually, maybe if I ever play a paladin again. Maybe not my multi-class one that I'm thinking about now, but it's eventually going to be a paladin. But I think if I ever brought a real paladin back, I'd bring back Sasami and like have fun with him, because he really deserved to have like a full story. It kind of sucks sometimes to think like, oh my god, all these new characters are getting like their lives told and their stories told, when like some of my first ideas haven't still been expressed, if that makes sense. So the downfall of this was not necessarily always having fun with the group, because they were always on their phones. They were always having problems with paying attention and talking about random shit and bringing people over, so they would overtalk people and not paying attention. And that was kind of in between where I was like, my one friend Ben, I love Ben, he's one of my best friends. I asked him if he wanted to join because he was a DM in another game, and was my stupid mistake. I brought him in, and he got made fun of by the group, and I also continued to get made fun of by the group. And I won't go into the full story because I want to talk about other D&D things. I've already been talking about this one story forever. Eventually, we both left the group. I was done with the group. I couldn't stand what they were saying about one of my best friends and how I was being treated in the group. And one story, I will probably tell this in one video one day. It's one of my TikToks, actually, but I didn't tell the full story. I will tell you guys a full story of that. So then moving on, I hadn't played D&D for a few years, I think. And then I'm not even gonna lie, like from 2016 to 2017, I hadn't played D&D for about like 3 years. But I was still watching Critical Role, and I got into like other shows. I started watching High Rollers. I started watching Knights of Everflame. I started watching Pathfinder games too. I started watching all those shows, blah blah blah. And I fell in, and it's, sorry, Dimension 20 and like a whole bunch of other shows, and I was falling in love with D&D again, and I was like, I really need a game. I need something that's going on. So around the time, I forget if this was before it or this was, I believe the Pathfinder game was first. But since, no, my virtual games were first, because I think I was already playing, and I was like, oh, well, I can join your game if you want to join in, if you want me to join in and stuff like that. I had gone on Critters looking for games or something, whatever the page is called. And thankfully, one of my DMs, who we are now streaming the game, Nerds Next Door, if you want to check us out on YouTube and Twitch. We stream every Tuesday, 3:45, and we have our VODs the next day, which I have to edit tomorrow. But yeah, I was like, hey, I've played characters like this before. Would it be okay? What does your campaign kind of need? And he was saying, oh, it would be cool if we had like a melee fighter. Now, I had no idea going into this campaign that we would already have So the campaign that was already there was a bard, a fighter, and a multi-class like sorcerer wizard, or sorry, warlock and sorcerer. Um, so me and another guy joined in, and he was doing a blade singer wizard, and I was like, well, they need more. They need something hardy. They need something really hardy. So I was like going full out, and I'm thankful that I did that because my DM loved my backstory, and he actually was saying how he wrote so many pages about it. And we're actually just getting into all that crazy stuff now again. Uh, I made my first fledged full out character who's gone from level 5 to now level, I think we're at level 8, I think. Uh, and I've been playing this campaign for a good while now. And her name's Alana Steelblood. She is a human barbarian, Path of the Totem bear. And she is 1 level in cleric now because she decided that she needs to help her friends in any way that she can be. She felt, holding back without being able to cast spells that would help people and to cure people. Now I want her to go into paladin. That's what I'm getting up to, but we'll see. I love the idea of her being a cleric too. But yeah, so we started that campaign virtually, and the campaign went so well that I was like, man, I really miss D&D and tabletops. I want to join other games, and I want to like eventually stream and do all this crazy stuff. So one of my friends who I'm in a campaign with now for Pathfinder, we started out with Pathfinder 1E, which is Pathfinder 1 edition, or first edition. Now we're playing Pathfinder 2E, which is second edition. But my first character in that was a character, Blood Rager. He is a Blood Rager, and he went into multi-classing into Paladin. You can kind of see where my choices lie, at least. Now I'm playing something completely different, which is kind of funny. But he was I didn't even tell about Alana, but Alana's also a werebear. She had to get through that curse stuff and like learning how to control herself and using her powers. And she's now like the huge tank of the group with like having a combined level with human and werewolf, like over 200 hit points. It's crazy. It's crazy how much you can get up to when you allow yourself to be creative and to do crazy things. And your DM wants you to have fun, So then for Pathfinder, I was playing a Blood Rager paladin, a half orc named Orel Bonrov Stratenois, who has a lover. A few of my characters have lovers, which is kind of funny. His main story was he was fighting for his love, and now this campaign's kind of over, but he was fighting for his love, and eventually they had kids, and he got her back and had kids with her and married her, stuff like that. Even though the big bad evil got away. The second character I'm playing right now that we've only had, they've had 2 campaign days. I've only had 1 because I had to miss the second one. I am playing a witch now, which is super cool. I am playing a witch patron of the Crimson Sun, sorry. Witch who also is a runic witch, and I'm multi-classing into monk. So this is going to be crazy. Crazy. I love doing either a spellcaster. I love being spellcasting and multi-classed like melee, so I can like have a choice of what I want to do and like extra smitey things and everything. But I think this character is really gonna ride out as a witch, monk, maybe rogue. We'll see, because we don't really have necessarily like rogue so far. Then after that game, we had joined another game. So Tuesdays we already had the first campaign. Now we have the second campaign where we all joined together, and some campaigns have changed because people have had work and things change. They have family matters to deal with. That's completely fine. The second campaign I'm in now, I'm playing a human bard. You can see a pattern now. I like playing humans. I'm playing a human bard, College of Swords. He originally started out as College of Lore. Now he's College of Swords, which is amazing, and he's part vampire now because of Grim Hollow, and I'm super excited, and that's been going over crazy, and I love the stuff that's going on with him now. And yeah, he is just trailing along. He's one of the first characters I like. This campaign really shows me how much these players around me are like so powerful and how much they want their characters to be strong and to do always the greatest things and leveling out their characters. And this is the first one where I was like, Michael is one of the characters I've been wanting to play for years. I wanted to play Michael for years. And finally I was like, I'm going to put him into this campaign. Thankfully I did. And I want him to be as strong as he can be in whatever he does, you know? Then I have a Thursday game. My Thursday game is I play Gunt. He is a half Goliath, half Dryad. He's a Wild Soul magic barbarian. And that's been interesting to play. I started out, because the campaign had already been started, me and another guy joined in at level 10. At level 10. And I've been having fun playing a barbarian with some magic in him, which is so much fun. I actually meant to say earlier, too, I've been debating multi-classing Michael into Rogue. So he was like Rogue subclass Phantom Rogue. Or, which the plan was already that I talked with the DM, that he probably is going to go into Undead Warlock. But Gunt's been a lot of fun. He's a different side of me that I didn't think was going to get expressed. And it's interesting playing a character so high leveled that you haven't had time to really like figure him out before this. Some people are just kind of playing themselves, but I really wanted to make sure that Gunt was a fleshed out character before he came in. Then I unfortunately had to stop a Sunday game, which I think they understand now, because I've never been able to join in. Like it was 2 Sundays in a row. I was like, hey guys, I can't join in anymore. Like I didn't say that, but I was like, I can't join today. I can't join today. After like the 3rd or 4th time, I don't think they asked me anymore. It's upsetting, but on Sundays I was playing my first cleric character, which I had some fun with. Her name's Harmony. My first tiefling character too. And yeah, I was excited. She's a life cleric. I was thinking she was gonna multi-class into like rogue, or maybe like, I don't know, maybe rogue or sorcerer or warlock. It'd be interesting to see her as a warlock raven queen. Oh my god, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, she might have multi-classed into warlock, to be completely honest. And then my newest character that's only gotten to play one freaking session because of timing and because of scheduling and because of all of our lives are crazy in quarantine. I started playing a character, and I can't give too much information, because if anybody watches this video, they would know too much. But the character is named Char. He is my first Genasi. I say Genasi because that's how it's technically supposed to be pronounced, or some people say Genasi. But he is a fire Genasi. He is 1 level, he is 2 levels of monk and 1 level of warlock. And if you're watching this from the campaign, close your ears, but he is a warlock follower of Tiamat. And I was so excited for that. I was so freaking excited for that. And then timing just got crazy and we couldn't meet up, and that character definitely deserves to come back no matter what campaign I'm playing. So then the rest of this video is just going to be me trailing off on whatever I want to talk about for D&D. Just something I forgot to talk about too, how much I truly love Critical Role. I have the Yasha tattoo with the fan art. I don't even know if I could show it with if you guys can even see that, my leg. With Yasha, the fan art that Courtney made during Critical Role, I was like, oh my god, I love that. And I already identified with Yasha so much from Critical Role and with Ashley's character that I needed to get it, because me and Yasha have a few similarities. Not going to go into all of that, but I truly love Yasha, and I truly love what Ashley's doing with Yasha too. I also have a D&D. I have a rose with a D20 in the middle of it, and it's cocked, so you can never tell what number it's actually on, which I love. And I want to get more D&D fantasy like tattoos. But yeah, Critical Role has saved me more than once, and yeah, I needed to tell about the tattoos. So going forward, what do I have some plans for D&D? Besides every Tuesday streaming and editing these videos for D&D, because not to say that our characters are going to die anytime soon. By the way, for at least, well, I wouldn't use him for that campaign. I have 3 characters I have ideas for. One is already a backup character for a campaign, but I'm debating switching him out for another character because we don't have it in the other campaign. And if I did the one that we're already in, it'd be like a double. I am a person, I like playing D&D where I like filling up a spot or a placeholder. Not that you necessarily like I hate when people say, oh, your party needs a healer, your party needs a melee fighter, your party needs. I just am a person, if you have a spot open and I'm just like, hey, I love the idea of going in and being like, hey, what does your party need? Because I want to be that spot. Like, I want to make a character from nothing and you just give me a class. Like, that's what I really like doing. And there are classes I did in my D&D tag where I thought I would never play before. I thought I would never play like a monk or something with a lot of spells. Like, I'm playing a witch in Pathfinder and I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna have a ton of spells soon. Like, clerics have a ton of spells. I have never played a D&D wizard yet, but I'm gearing up towards it because I genuinely feel like I'm at a good spot to do that. So some of my character ideas, if you are somebody who is eventually going to play D&D with me, and you don't want to know what I'm going to play for spoilers, or you're good and you can listen to this and go ahead, but I'm going to flat out say ideas right now. So for my Tuesday night group, my backup character was a divine, I think it's not Divine Mercy. Maybe it's Divine Mercy. Divine Soul, it's something like that. The Healing Sorcerer, whatever the hell that's called. I'm not going to say what race because that's a true spoiler for whatever I was going to do. But I think he might switch over to my... If Alana, God forbid, knock on wood, if Alana ever dies in that first campaign, which I don't think she ever is going to, just with how she is as a person, maybe, and like heroically, I think she would do it. I might want to put that sorcerer in that campaign because we're down one caster and we don't have a sorcerer right now. But the other campaign, we have me as a melee fighter now. We have Kate as a melee fighter. She's a monk. We have Kaliana as a melee fighter, and we have two like casters. We have actually a sorcerer. That's why I was like, man, maybe I shouldn't be a double sorcerer. And we have like a multi-class paladin, I think. I don't even know what this character... His name's Valo. I forget what he is. He's either a paladin or a cleric, but he's multi-class into things. And I think it would just make more sense. I want to make so freaking bad. Like, I think it would be truly me, but personified bigger. I really want to play a Leonin Runic Knight. I just gave away almost everything. But, like, I want to play him so freaking bad. And I think he might be in this campaign. Unless I decide to play, like, a wizard or something. We'll see. We'll see what I actually get to. Because I have ideas. There are 2 other classes that I really want to play. I really want to play a wizard, and I really want to play a ranger now. Because... for years, not that I thought Rangers were stupid, but I was like, oh, Rangers have this and they don't have that. But like over the years, like Rangers have gotten more and more interesting. And like I've noticed how important it is to have like a familiar or a beast companion. It's like, dude, they're fucking strong. Especially with now 3 people being around me playing them. Not Rangers specifically, but having like animal companions. I'm like, it's actually a lot more powerful than I thought. Actually, one more person's about to get another animal companion too. And the other idea I tossed around was when I was in that really horrible first campaign, the one that was after like my first real D&D 5e experience, we were in technically 2 campaigns. I actually forgot to bring up this character completely. I had Sosami, but I also had a character named No Direwig Karan, which in Elvish means beware red. Because he was my first druid character, because one person from the first campaign was like, druids are so hard, they have so many spells, and like I don't know when to do this and do that. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna show you how to play a druid then, because not to be cocky, but I was like, I want to show you how to play a druid, and I want to have fun playing like a magic-y melee fighter. So I've already played a druid, but I'd love to play like a druid for like a full campaign. I love to play this one. This one is like a hothead, fiery, like does whatever the fuck he wants kind of guy. Like, he tells you to fuck off every 2 minutes. Like, this guy, and he's raised by wolves. Like, that's his backstory, like, genuinely. But that doesn't give too much away if I say that. Loves fire, like, that type of stuff. And I never got to fully play him as a character. I would love to bring him into D&D world. So he was technically going to be, actually, he would probably be better for the second night campaign, or maybe the first. Yeah, because then I could move the sorcerer to the first one and then change my other backup character to this druid. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what actually transpires, because being a vampire now, not that it's like not easy or hard to kill me, but I'm immortal now as a vampire, so it's like the only thing that's gonna kill me is like getting killed. I'm not gonna die of old age, unless I finally kick the bucket. I just want to die. But yeah, that's been interesting. The other thing I can talk about with the podcast, which is crazy to even say, I've had my first character like love interest. In other campaigns, I never had a long enough campaign where a character liked another character. For my first experience over in Ohio, it wasn't like that kind of campaign. It was more like we were defending against evil a lot, so it's kind of one of those campaigns. And no offense, all the characters were guys, so it was like hard to love when your first character, you're just trying to play yourself almost. You're playing like a cis. I'm playing like a cis male. My first real D&D experience. He wasn't like, he didn't like people. He had too much ambition. Like, he was trying to like, continue what had happened to his like his father figure, to do any of that types of stuff. No Darwin Karan. I think there was a little inkling of him liking somebody, but it didn't actually happen. Then I started playing the D&D one that I'm virtually playing, and if you're listening to this because you're one of my damn players in the game, you might not want to listen to this. But Alana has had her first... She had her lover before, all the craziness happened in her backstory, and she thought she killed her lover. Spoiler alert if you didn't know that. Or maybe he still is. I don't know, actually, because, what happened in the last episode, you'll find out. But, like... Yeah, she kind of got with the point where she was like, well, do I continue my life not trying to love another person, or do I try and live on for somebody else? And now things have changed that maybe he's still out there, kind of thing. Then in the night campaign on Tuesday, no one has really figured it out. It's actually kind of funny because our Ray and the DM, who's the DM in the Tuesday morning campaign or Tuesday afternoon campaign, is playing Cade the monk in the second campaign, and she's been all over Michael, like, allowing her to bite him for more energy because she can heal herself, and then asked him on a date tonight. You guys are gonna hear these stories, we won't stream this, and it's like Michael was already in love with somebody before he left to go travel the world. And with context clues, the people in the game could figure it out, because Michael has dropped a huge hint this last game. We just had the game earlier. Like, you would know just from him saying this, but he loves somebody. He quote unquote loves somebody right now. Like, whether it's the person from home or somebody new, he does love somebody new. And I'm not going to say, because we haven't gotten to that point yet, and I want it to be a big surprise for the people that don't know yet. And that's all I'm going to leave it as. For Pathfinder, Aurel already had his love, so he was trying to get her back. He thought maybe he could have fell in love with somebody else, but no, his love for her was too strong, so they got back together. The 2E game is way too early. We had our first session. There's no way I'm going to love anybody in the beginning. I mean, that would be a strong love. And then, yeah, Harmony didn't get a chance to like anybody. No, she grew, like, people grew on her, but she was in love with the Raven Queen. Like, that was her. She's basically a nun for the Raven Queen. That's what I made her as a character. That's what her whole goal is. And then Gun, it's also matters your campaign. Like Gun has a purpose right now. Which he already told the campaign. We're not streaming it yet. Apparently, we're gonna stream it later. But he is looking for his mother. That's his main goal, and it's not like he's going to start loving somebody while he's on his mission. Like he's got a purpose. He needs to do it. I feel like, not that love is like you can't love somebody while this crazy stuff is going on, because trust me, I learned that in true life, like in my own life, in my own real life. And I learned that through my D&D campaign with Michael. Like, even in the hardest of times, sometimes love gets brought out, or liking gets brought out harder, just because you're in those experiences, and like it pushes it out of you. It makes you into the best or the worst person of yourself, And I could talk about that all night, but I don't want to give too much away for anybody who's listening from my game. I mean, in the long run, they're very good about not metagaming, but it's also that shock of like hearing it for the first time. It's also funny too. I really try. I'm one of those people. I love holding on to things until they actually come out for the game, and even real life, I do that too. But I don't want people to know things. And then I almost forgot about Char. Yeah, Char doesn't like anybody yet. He has his own mission. He wants to bring back I guess no one from my close. So I have like a best friend group that's my in real life best friend group. And we were playing that game with them, and it's all their first D&D games for the first time, besides me and the DM, because it was me and the DM. The DM's Ben from the other game, which is actually kind of funny. And yeah, he has his goal set. He wants to bring back he wants to kill the person who killed his whole family, like that's what he wants to do right now. And he thinks that following this person's going to help him. And that's all I'm going to leave it as. Characters, like, I did bring up the Runic Knight. I would love to play, like, races now. Like, Leonin is definitely the next one. If I don't play my backup character, or if I don't play the other backup character for a human. By the way, no Darui Karan. I was going to debate making him an elf, maybe, but I want him to be a human. Yeah, I want to play everything now. Like, Turtles, not just because of Critical Role, but Turtles, and my one friend is actually, the DM from the night group is actually a character now in our afternoon group, and he's playing a Turtle, and I really want to play like a Turtle now. I want to play like different classes, or like all these different races and classes. Like, I want to try everything now. And especially for years, not only was I afraid to play like a huge magic user, like a wizard or a sorcerer, because sorcery points still confuse me, and I wanted to make my character backup character a sorcerer, so I could get like kind of familiar with it and see how people like use it. But I was afraid to multi-class for the longest time too. I thought like if I multi-classed, I would like lose certain abilities. I wouldn't get to like level 5 for this, or even if you level up later, you're like, I won't get this ability. I won't be able to do this because I won't get this ability, and will this cancel out this thing? The only thing I notice is when you think like that, it just cancels your imagination. Like, if you want to multi-class, even at like the lowest level, I would recommend, though, this is my opinion, but if you are new to D&D and you are like, oh my god, I want to multi-class already, you heard about multi-classing, please play a few classes not multi-class, at least to like level, I don't know, 6 or 10 before you start multi-classing, because it turns into people not understanding how the game works. Because if your first character is a multi-class character, which I'm not saying you can't do, but sometimes people don't learn the game that way. Like, they think that everybody has everything when really they only have the thing from their class. And the other cool part is like getting to play a character from start to beginning, with like from start to ending, with like their class and their race, and like not changing things. I'm just now getting into the point where I've DM'd before, I've played a few characters, and I've played a good amount of classes that I want to start exploring what I can do with other classes and races and such like that. It's actually kind of funny. The joke is I mostly play humans. Like, I like playing humans just because they're easier. I feel like I can identify them because obviously I'm a human. But when it comes to like, now I'm starting to realize it's just like you're just playing the character. Like, you don't have to think of it as like, I mean, unless you're playing a character that has like a very different personality than yourself or like a different voice. Like, Alana Steelblood is like my lighter British posh voice. Gunt is my I try and be as low as possible. Like, Gunt is like a Texan a Texan Southern voice. Michael is just a hog tie wallin'. He's just my country bard. He just goes over and he does a Southern accent for everything. He is he is one of my favorite because he's the most character like me, even though I'm not Southern. It just reminds me of Tecumseh too. It brings back old memories. And then Harmony was like a little bit more posh, but not fully. She was like on the more American posh. Like, if an American tried to do a British accent, but like they kind of learned it over being in England or something for like a year or two, and they came back and they had like a few words here and there that popped, like, oh, look over there, like, here they are. Oh, not even that much. Like, Alana's more like, here I am, I'm doing my full posh accent and I'm keeping it up and light. Like, that's more of her. Even though she's a barbarian from a tribe, from the Wildmother tribe. That's another thing too I've been loving. I love getting to like play religions now because like you have way more to play with, or just having like crazier backstories. Sometimes I feel like people are afraid, even if it's like their first game, to write a lot about their characters. Sometimes it gives the DM more for things to fuck with you with, so you can have fun and like talk with people, and get more fun out of some things. And some players I feel like are just nervous to play, and it's like you just gotta jump in. You gotta like fully immerse yourself. You can ease yourself into it. Trust me, like you can have fun with it. That's how some groups are, and I've been in. It's like some people are afraid to do certain things, and once you get the hang of it, it's really just a good 10 minutes of sitting down and being like, D&D is about doing anything you want. It's about doing anything you want. Anything you want to do. If you want to kill, the only thing I would say is if you're playing a good campaign, quote unquote good campaign, and my normal D&D and DM players will definitely know what I'm talking about when I say that. You don't want to necessarily be evil in a full good campaign. Your DM should know everything. That's another thing too. Treat your DMs well. Like, don't write a backstory that you're like, hey, I'm gonna be evil for this campaign and I'm gonna send in my backstory a day before it's due. I have talked over with all of my DMs like, hey, this is my idea. Is this okay? Is this cool? Does this work with your world? And like, I'll ask DMs for like their old, maps and what they think they're using for like certain characters, like what city would they be from. It's just, I'm very lucky with like, I made it so open for me for Alana. Her tribe was a traveling barbarian Wildmother tribe, so she's not necessarily from one place. She's from everywhere. Now Gun is from a cabin in the woods, so I didn't have to worry about like where he was from. He's just from one of the random cities in a cabin. Maybe Gun didn't even know at the point. Maybe he just started walking around. He's like, I'm close to this town. Michael is from somewhere, but I would need to ask my DM what city because I didn't write that down. I don't think I did, at least. I could write it down. I mean, I can make up a city too. No Darwick Kron was from the forest. He didn't know who his parents were, which I have an idea of who his parents are. I wrote that into the backstory. I actually wrote that because I did not want people fucking over my backstory. And that's another thing, too. If you don't trust your DM and you want to make sure that they go... And I don't do this with any... There's only one DM. And I'll be honest, there's only one DM or GM that I write everything for now. Because I do not trust them writing a backstory for me. Because... I have three great DMs who will literally write like on top of the world for me. They will write exactly the points where it would make sense and do things. I've had some crazy DMs before and GMs before where I will write like, hey, my character has this thing like 2 weeks in advance. Is this okay? And they're like, yeah, sure, sure, sure. And we get into the campaign, and then it's like maybe even a month into it, they start talking about like, oh yeah, well your character did this and they were over here, and I'm like, that's not possible because they were doing this and doing that during my backstory. It's like, did you even read? That's another thing too. If you're a player in a game or if you're a DM, please read what the other people give you, because that's in the world. If your character's not supposed to know it, I completely understand. There was a thing today I wasn't supposed to know about a certain thing, and I was like, well, I don't think Alana would know this, so I'm not gonna say it. Like, I don't think she would say that. Or you're allowed to do that stuff. You're allowed to be like, oh, I take that back, or I re-say the information just like the DM said. It's a game. You're supposed to have fun. You're supposed to do all this crazy stuff. The greatest quote I heard from a DM, I think it was actually online, is the players are supposed to be the big bad heroes. They're the ones that are supposed to tell the story. If you're not having fun, the DM's not having fun. That's why at this point, I've had a few bad DMs and GMs. I would rather run a campaign for people that really want to play the game than sit under a bad or good GM or DM at this point. I mean, sorry, a bad GM or DM at this point, because it's not worth my time. Like, it's literally like, if you don't know half the rules and half the players are asking me the rules or what's going on, I'm not supposed to be the DM. You're supposed to be the one making the rules. And if half the time the rules don't make sense, I don't want to be in your campaign, because you're not going by the rules written in the book, So to end it on a good point, I will definitely be making more episodes on this podcast episode for D&D. This might be like podcast episode D&D just in general, but then I might make D&D part 2, D&D story of the time that blah, blah, blah. So I didn't want to be fully open the first episode. I just wanted to talk from my head and say what was on my brain and what was going on. I might even have one of my best friends come on, Ben, and talk about some D&D stuff that he's done in the past and what he's done as a DM and stuff like that. I'd love to have other people on as a podcast episode just to hear how they work as people and such like that. Because Ben had I would have loved to play in his game, because he played a virtual game too. I would love for him to, if he brought me on, I would have been perfect for his friends in his game. I would like to think so. I'm not always perfect, but I like to think with Ben, if they were enjoying Ben's stuff, then I really get along with Ben's stuff too. I just wish I got to play my Genasi, my Fire Genasi. He might actually come up maybe I'll make him one of my backup characters, but I really want to play the Runic Knight. I really, really want to play the Runic Knight. And I have some crazy ideas. But now I'm actually debating doing like a ranger. Maybe like a dragon ranger or something. Nah, I want to do a dragon ranger. I want to do something like a lion or like a bear. Or maybe like a giant octopus. Oh, that'd be so cool. Like doing the opposite spectrum stuff. Or maybe a giant bird. Oh, a giant bird would be fucking sick. Okay, I got some ideas. I might do a ranger bird type or something. And then we have like all these new classes from Tasha's and stuff in the Unearthed Arcana with like Spore Druid. I was actually looking at all the Phantom stuff like for Rogue, and like it's like, oh my god, you can play anything you want now. Like, there's so many classes and so many things open, and like if your DM's open to things, I have a DM now who said like you can have haste as a 3rd level spell as a bard, and I was like, because I think it's in one of the Unearthed Arcana things, and I was like, okay, like I'm cool with that, because my character's a College of Swords, and if I have haste on me, and I have enlarge on me, and I have mirror image on me at one point, and I gotta take that talent, because he allows talents in this game. I want to take the more than one concentration spell at once. Ooh, it's gonna be crazy sick, yo. But I'm going to end there for today. I hope you guys liked my rambling and all that type of stuff. Stopping a little bit before an hour. But as always, my name is James Joseph Edward Jesperger Jr., but please call me Jimmy for short. If you guys have anything, any questions, any topics you want me to do on podcasts or covers or video games, please let me know. Just putting this out there again, because this is specifically my D&D podcast episode. I do have a D&D stream. We stream 3:45 on Tuesdays Eastern Standard Time every Tuesday, ending around 5:36. And yeah, the VOD will go up the next day, which I have to edit tomorrow, and it will go up at 4 o'clock every Thursday Eastern Standard Time. So I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys so much, and peace. Oh, I didn't do it right. Peace.